Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers, and this is our first run review of the Saucony Triumph RFG. Okay, so what exactly is the Saucony Triumph RFG? Well, the RFG stands for Run for Good, and this is essentially a more sustainably made version of the Saucony Triumph 21, the shoe we named Best Cushion Shoe of 2023 in the recent Run Testers Awards. Now, it's designed for the same types of runs as the Triumph 21. It comes in at the same price as well. The heel to toe drop, forefoot and at the heel are exactly the same as the Triumph 21 as well too. There is a little bit of difference in the weight as we found in our UK size 8, but ultimately what you're getting here from the upper, the midsole, even inside the shoe and the outsole are materials that are much kinder on the planet. And this is an approach we're seeing from all brands striving to make more sustainably made shoes, and it's whether it's kind of smaller kind of upper coming brands like Allbirds or the kind of established kind of players like Mizuno as well too. We're seeing it from all brands. So this is Saucony's most sustainable shoe to date. What makes it more sustainable than other shoes previously, or more than the standard Triumph 21? Well, we'll start with the upper. So you're getting this mesh upper, which is made from cotton, which is based from plant-based dyes. Then you go inside the shoe, you are also getting a Power Run Plus Bio sock liner as well to give you that kind of softness, but also do it in a more kind of eco-friendly way. When you get into the midsole, you're getting this Power Run Bio Plus midsole foam. Now the Saucony Triumph 21, you're getting the Power Run Plus midsole foam. The aim is to offer the same kind of feeling in terms of that midsole, but ultimately you're getting something that's corn-based, and it's over 55% corn-based in terms of that kind of midsole foam that you're getting here on this shoe. When you get down to the outsole, you're getting kind of more natural kind of gum rubber used here. It's the same kind of design in terms of that outsole, but ultimately it's used or made from 80% of natural rubber. So as I said, from the upper, the midsole, and to the outsole, and even inside this shoe, this is aiming to be a more sustainable version of the Saucony Triumph 21. So what is it like to run with? Let's get into it. So I'll start with fit, and I'd say it has been pretty good for me in a couple of runs that I have done with the Triumph RFG. I think ultimately Saucony is striving to deliver as close an experience in terms of the fit to the Triumph 21. It's not identical, but I think there's plenty of similarities here. What I have noticed is, and I threw the Triumph 21 on, is that this upper definitely has a bit more volume to it. It doesn't necessarily change the experience of how the shoes feels, because ultimately it's about delivering that kind of comfort. But I do think maybe the Triumph 21 upper kind of maybe sucks in a little bit more around your feet. Now I'm pretty happy with the space up front I've got here in the toes. In my one, I wouldn't want to go half a size up, half a size down. I didn't find it too snug. The level of padding in the tongue and the kind of heel collar here is pretty similar to what we've got on the Triumph 21 as well. So I would say it's a similar experience there too. Saucony has changed the kind of nature of the feel of the kind of heel tab here as well. It's a stretchier one, sits closer to the back of the shoe, whereas I think it's a little bit looser on the Triumph 21. So if you like a shoe that you can kind of throw off, you know, it's easier to kind of take off, then I'm probably getting a little bit more of that on the Triumph 21, but ultimately it's not something I massively care about. I think in terms of the lockdown, I think it's pretty good overall. I do think because, as I said, there's a bit more volume to this upper, you do maybe need to pull in those laces a little bit more against that tongue, but ultimately it's been very comfortable overall. So I would say my UK size 8, having run a lot in a UK size 8 in the Triumph 21, it's very similar. As I said, a bit more volume in the upper, but I don't think it necessarily changes the nature of the fit in the Triumph RFG overall. So I've actually done a couple of runs in the Saucony Triumph RFG. Yesterday I did a 5k treadmill run, very slow, easy. Really my way of trying to make sure that the fit kind of works, the lockdown's going to be all good, I don't have to really play around with it too much. And then today I did just over 10 miles, and that was very easy paced. You know, the types of runs that I would use the Saucony Triumph 21 for. Ultimately, I think, you know, the RFG is designed for the same types of runs, and that's kind of what I aim to do for those first couple of runs in it. Now, I talked a little bit about the upper in the fit side of things, and I do think the upper is slightly different in it, but ultimately it's geared to deliver the same thing, and that is comfort, and you are getting comfort here. Now, the weight of the shoe has picked up a little bit, and we do see that with sustainable running shoes, or the sustainable versions of other kind of the standard running shoes, where it has picked up a little bit of weight, but it hasn't altered, I don't think, what this shoe is designed for, and ultimately it is for this kind of slow, long, easy, kind of pressure off type of runs. Now, the midsole is different. This is a different midsole. This is a more sustainable midsole. It's got that kind of kind of corn-based foam here, over 55% that Saucony says. Now, what I would say is, in comparison to the Triumph 21, I don't think it is as plush, but there's some softness to it. I definitely think it sits between kind of plush and a bit firm. It's not overly firm. I think it almost kind of hits the sweet spot there, I do think, ultimately. Or that's what I felt on my couple of runs with it. I do think there's a nice rebound in there. It's not maybe as pronounced maybe as the Saucony Triumph 21, but it's been pretty good. And when I wanted to slightly pick the pace up in this shoe, you know, in places where I could, then it felt absolutely fine. I do think there's a lot of the same kind of characteristics in terms of the ride and feeling of the Saucony Triumph 21 in the RFG, but I would say that maybe the Triumph 21 does feel a lot plusher, and if that's something that you like in the shoe, then that's not what you're going to get here. And that's kind of extended what you're getting here in the kind of sock liner here as well too, where you do sink into it. I don't think you sink in as much as you do in the one that's used in the Triumph 21, but I think it does a good job of replicating that feeling of the midsole and kind of sitting your foot inside this shoe compared to the kind of standard Triumph. Now, the other thing I would say I've kind of noticed here is the outsole. Obviously, there's a little bit more outsole here. It's that kind of, it's this kind of gum style rubber, and it definitely feels a little bit more pronounced. I do think you feel it a little bit more on the runs. It's not uncomfortable or anything like that, but ultimately I do think you feel this outsole a little bit more underneath. But I think in terms of the gripping side of things, it feels very similar to the Triumph 21. Now, I was in pretty rainy conditions. I went when it was a bit calmer. At the end of the run, it started to pick up and it was a bit heavier. I was on pavements and roads, generally fine. When I did have to trudge through some kind of wetter, kind of boggier leaves on pavements, it did slip around a little bit, so it wasn't perfect in that run, but I think generally dry pavements, dry roads, slightly wet pavements, it should be absolutely fine. But I do think it's going to work for the same types of runs as the Saucony Triumph 21. As I say, I don't think the added weight massively changes what it feels like. I do think you can slightly pick the pace up in it a little bit, but it's, you know, we're not talking speed stuff here or speed work or kind of faster, kind of up-tempo running, but you could slightly kind of up that kind of speed in these shoes and it would be absolutely fine. But ultimately, those kind of slower, longer, easy pace runs is what the shoe's designed for. And in that 10-mile run, it felt absolutely fine from that point of view. I didn't feel it was a heavy shoe, a clunky shoe. I said there's characteristics here of the Triumph 21 in this shoe. And ultimately, that's what Saucony wants to deliver here. I say it's not identical, but I definitely do think gives you enough of that feel of a Saucony Triumph shoe that makes it feel very familiar, and familiar definitely in a good way. Okay, so some initial thoughts on the Saucony Triumph RFG, and I think there's a few ways to look at this. Now, how does it compare to the Saucony Triumph 21, I think, first and foremost, and how well does it replicate the feeling of running in the Triumph 21? And I would say pretty good overall. It's not identical, but it's pretty good. And I think in essence, it's still going to be built and designed or be a best fit for the same types of runs as the Triumph 21. The upper definitely feels different, but I think it's geared towards offering that kind of comfort, which is exactly what we have from the Saucony Triumph 21. I think the midsole gives you some of that feeling of the kind of power run plus midsole you get on the Triumph 21, but as I said, I don't think it feels as soft and as plush. It probably sits a little bit above that, but ultimately I still think the ride and the feeling of it feels very similar, and it feels similar enough to feel like you're getting a similar experience. And again, it's the same with the outsole as well. Though, as I said, I did find it a little bit slippy in place, and it does feel like there's a bit more of that rubber there ultimately as well too. Another way to look at this, I think, is this another important step in terms of sustainable running shoes that can really match the performance of shoes that aren't as sustainable, aren't as friendly on the planet in terms of materials that are being used? I think it is a positive step. I think another thing that's still holding things back a little bit is the extra materials do seem to add a little bit more weight overall, and that's kind of what I've seen in the kind of the sustainable running shoes that I've run in general. So that's something that still needs to improve. I like the fact that the price has matched what the Triumph 21 costs as well, where I think before, or some other shoes, they have been a little bit more expensive. So I would definitely say this is a good step. This marks a good example and showcase of a sustainable running shoe that's getting close to what those, the shoes that it's kind of replicating, but in a more kind of, eco-friendly way. I think in terms of other sustainable running shoes that I've tested or that are out there, I do think is a lot nicer than something like what kind of Allbirds kind of delivers. I just think those shoes can still feel a little bit on the heavy side, and I think in terms of delivering or matching some other road running shoes, I don't think it's quite there yet. It's close, but not quite there yet. I think in terms of shoes that I've tested from my Zuno, where their kind of sustainable running shoe approach, I think has worked really well. And I think that sits there with things like this, where you're starting to see shoes that kind of replicate or feel like you are, you're running in a shoe, a normal running shoe, but it is something that is made in a more eco-friendly way, and that is another good example. So I think, as I said, I think this is a step in the right direction. I think it's a good showcase of a sustainable running shoe. Still think there's little things that need to happen to kind of mirror that, and I think what I really want to see is, I think it almost feels a little bit easier to do it at this kind of category of shoe. It's more those kind of performance-based shoes where we still need to see things happen a little bit more in terms of matching what we get from standard kind of performance running shoes. But in terms of a kind of cushioned shoe and mirroring what we've got in the Saucony Triumph now, I think the Triumph RFG so far seems to be doing a good job. As I said, I want to see how the midsole holds up and the upper kind of works, and it's taken a bit of a beating in the rain today, kind of holds up over longer term use. But I think it's a good first impression so far, and I'm looking forward to running a bit more on the Triumph RFG. Can it match and effectively replace the Triumph 21 in terms of the types of runs that I'd want to use that shoe for? That's to be seen. But yeah, as I said, looking forward to spending a bit more time in the Triumph RFG, and pretty positive overall so far. Okay, so there you have it. Some initial thoughts on the Saucony Triumph RFG. Obviously, plenty more running to do in the shoe before we get to a full review. If you've got any questions, do let us know. As always, like and subscribe. Hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos. And yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.